All right, good day, everyone. Sorry about the little bit of a late start on today. We are going to have a little bit more of a delay. The presenter is having microphone issues. While we're working through that, she's going to do a quick restart of her computer. And while that's occurring, I'm going to go through announcements, and hopefully this times out perfectly so that when she's back on, we'll be done with the announcements. So let me just roll through those today. So the first announcement that we have here is that our presentation today is, well, it's for the Cloud Pass Virtual Group, and I'm Jason Straight. The presentation is Azure Data Factory, an overview of modern data integration services in the cloud. And Myra Ma will be our presenter. This virtual group is sponsored by Microsoft Azure. Microsoft Azure provides most likely the data platform in the cloud that a lot of you are using. They're supporting us to help make sure that folks are aware of what's available out on Microsoft Azure, also to make sure that we are able to continue to provide the training that people need in order to continue to utilize the platform. If you are not yet a member of the virtual group, I do recommend becoming a member. You can do so at cloud.pass.org. You go on out there, you can log in, and when you've logged in and you've subscribed, you'll get the newsletter that'll tell you about upcoming sessions, as well as a list of all of the changes that happen to the schedule on occasion. In regards to upcoming sessions, I have 9 more that are currently fully scheduled out. We've got later on this week, Christian Coate coming in to talk about Power BI, Azure Data Factory, and Databricks. I do also have another 4 presentations that I'm working on getting scheduled. So we should see a few more pop onto the schedule coming up, continue to fill in some of those openings that we have in May and June and July. Speaking of presenters, though, we are always looking for additional presenters. So if you are interested in presenting, please go and email me at cloud@pass.org. Or if you'd like, you can go out to the virtual group website and click on the call for speakers that's out there. That gives you an opportunity to fill out a form, send me the information, and then we will also get you onto the schedule. The call for speakers for Pass Summit 2020 is currently open. So if you are interested in being considered to speak at the 2020 Pass Summit, you can just go on out to pass.org Summit 2020 speakers, that call for speakers that's out there. And you have until April 23rd to get in up to 3 sessions to be considered and reviewed.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Myra.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. So I'm about halfway through the announcements, and then I can hand things over to you and we can get things going.
Right, perfect.
Yeah, and it sounded like a reboot is all you really needed there.
Right, thanks.
Yep. Okay, next is Pass Summit 2020. If you are planning to go and you have not registered yet, there is a discount that you can get by using the virtual group's discount code. And let's see here. Throughout the session, and I didn't have a chance really to go over this prior to with Myra, but if you do have any questions, there is a question panel in the GoToMeeting interface. And throughout the presentation, just type those in. And then at the end of the session, time permitting, we'll go through as many of the questions as folks have. And with that, I can hand things over. And our presentation today is Azure Data Factory, an overview of modern data integration services in the cloud. So let me make you the presenter. All right. All right, I can see PowerPoint now.
Cool, perfect.
And it's the design view that's showing up.
Which screen can you see?
I see the screen that has the presenter notes.
Yeah. So I'm trying to share the other screen in the presentation mode. Can you see that?
It's still the presenter view.
How can I choose which screen I can share?
So on the sharing panel, there is a drop down underneath the show, and on that you should have an option between each of your screens.
Can you see my screen now?
Oh, yep, now it's the correct screen.
It's the presentation mode?
Yep, presentation mode.
Perfect. Okay, cool. I can start?
Yep, go ahead, and I will just mute myself so I don't interrupt.
Cool, perfect. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? They can hear me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds great.
Hey, just still wondering, how do I know who are joining? Or do I know how many people joining?
We got about 99 that are in right now.
Right. How can I communicate with them? Or just one way?
Yeah, it's just one way.
Right. Okay. So it's a bit of hard that I need to ask the questions about the level of expertise.
Yeah, what we could do is if you've got, we can have people raise their hands.
Okay. Where can I see that?
Let me make you an organizer, and then you'll have another thing that shows up under attendees, which will show all the attendees, and you can have folks raise their hands.
Perfect. Okay. Cool. Now I can start.
All right.
Hi, everyone. Hope you can hear me all right. I'm Myra. I'm a cloud solution architect at Microsoft. I don't know whether you heard about Jack Ma. He's one of the richest guy in Asia. A lot of people have been asking me, what's my relationship with Jack Ma? So to be honest, we are family actually. We're family 500 years ago. But the thing is that I know him very well, but he doesn't know me. This guy is the founder of Alibaba, and I guess that's why I end up in Microsoft, and he started his Alibaba Emperor. Just a little bit dry joke. So today, I will be talking about Azure Data Factory, an overview of modern data integration service in the cloud. So it's a bit of different from I used to deliver a presentation. At least I can ask questions in person when I deliver presentations on conference or SQL Saturday, for example. I can ask the audience their expertise level, skills level of Azure Data Factory. So could you please show hands if you know Azure Data Factory? Sorry, if you don't know Azure Data Factory, could you please raise your hands? If you don't know Azure Data Factory at all, or we just know a tiny bit of Azure Data Factory, can I please see what our audience like? I guess one of the difficulty is delivering a webinar is you have so many audience online, but you really don't know whether they can benefit from your session because your audience level, skills level are so different. So I just want to set up the right expectations here. What I am going to cover today is probably, as you can tell from the title, an overview. So it's pretty much level 100 to level 200. So if you are an expertise of ADF, I'm not sure whether you can benefit a lot from this session, but you can definitely ask any questions if you have.
And about 20% raise their hands.
20%.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. I see some people saying they're new to ADF, and Jason, the organizer, just told me we have 20% people raised their hands. Cool, perfect. So at least I'm targeting at least that's 1/5 of the audience. But yeah, feel free to ask any questions, and I can see I'm just keeping an eye on the chat panel. Cool, let's get started. Hope you can see my screen moving.
Yep.
Today, what we're going to talk about is 3 sessions, basically. Why and what? Why ADF? What is ADF? And I'm going to introduce some key concepts of ADF. And we're going to end the session with some demo. If you're new to ADF and you've never seen the ADF environment, and today is a perfect chance that I can show you. So just at this minute when I'm talking to you, this is happening. We have 31 million messages are sent through Facebook. 1.17 trillion unique users are using Google at this moment. So it is an information bomb. And what that means is the world is changing in a disruptive way. For individuals, we might just need to be smarter and more selective in terms of what information we process. But for organizations, they have to make that leap to build distinct advantages by making value out of the massive data generated every day, every minute. And we know that the last 2 years, the data generated from the last 2 years is a lot more than the overall data generated for the last 2 decades. So in order to make that leap, we have to look across trends and decision and decide which variables and trends we need to care about. What data will prevail? What data we need to invest in? These are some facts. Data will be grown to 44 zettabytes in 2020, which is this year. Today, 80% of the organizations adopted cloud-first strategies. AI investment increased by 300% in 2018. So the world is changing, and we believe that heavily shaped and shoulder disruption in the future is very important. However, there are barriers. And the barriers, from what I talk with the customers, we can see commonly the organizations have those problems. They have data silos, data all over the places, and they have inconsistent data types. They have, especially with the social media data, IoT data, streaming data, the data is not just the relational data. It's not just a key and a pair, key and value pairs. It's more towards unstructured or semi-structured data. But unfortunately, most of those data are unanalyzed. And we have very complex solutions for the business intelligence, for the data analytics platform. And it's multi-cloud environment. It's not just on-prem like what we are familiar with, we used to have. And the cost is dramatic. So let me just show you. This is what I've been working for a client couple of days ago. This is the diagram that I draw from the conversation that I had with the customers, and then I just analyze what's their current data architecture. And you can see from the diagram that they do have a very messy architecture. And how could you get quick insights? how could you get all those information, all those raw data that have abundant information? It's pretty much impossible. And the process is really tedious, very complicated, and it's very costly as well. And as you can see, they use a lot of different things. And if you're using Excel most of the time for huge volume of data, you're gonna lose the quality of your data set, and you're gonna have a lot of issues with your data quality. So from this diagram, you can see a lot of problems: data silos, data invisibility, data quality, data security. Those all the common issues organizations are facing right now. And businesses are suffering because they can't get the insights as soon as possible. So they can't act on it. They can't make a right strategy for the company. So what are we trying to achieve is we need to build a world where we have one hub for all data. We have to support for diverse types of data. We want to scale up at terabytes scale or even petabyte scale. We want to have a million tools and ecosystem. We don't want a complicated tools. We want a simple. The easier, the better. And also we want lower TCO, total cost of ownership. We want a lot, but is it possible? I believe so. I think the trend in the BI world, in the data analytics world, is no matter how complicated the data is, there will be a simpler solution. And today, I want to introduce you to the concept of Azure Data Factory. What is Azure Data Factory? A cloud-based data integration service that allows you to orchestrate and automate data movement and a data transformation. Just be careful. The definition is given by the Microsoft Azure Data Factory product team, and each word is carefully chosen. So it's an orchestration tool, and it can automate your data movement and data transformation. If you are not familiar with Azure Data Factory, a lot of people want to explain to you that it is an online version of SSIS. I really don't like that definition. Hopefully, for the audience that you are somehow familiar with SSIS, it's the SQL Server Integration Services. It's very, very popular probably a decade ago. It's more for an on-prem solution. But I don't think Azure Data Factory, I don't agree at all. Azure Data Factory is the online version of SSIS. It's similar. It's also an ETL, ELT tool, but Azure Data Factory is a lot more powerful than just a SSIS. And I'll explain that later on. Just let me know if you have any questions. You can post on the chat, and if I see that, I will answer that while I'm talking. So what is Azure Data Factory then? What are the processes? Why it's different from SSIS? As we know that if you are from the data background and if you know a bit of business intelligence, the whole idea of business intelligence is you transform the raw data, the garbage data, into valuable information. So instead of garbage in, garbage out, you have garbage in, information out. So how to make this process, the key is these four. You connect and collect your data sources. You transform and you enrich your data set. You publish your data transformation process, and you monitor the process. I think collect and connect is quite easy to understand, right? You need to connect to a particular data source. And I think I'm gonna focus on the transform and enrich later on in my demo. I think that's the key part of show you the powerful side of Azure Data Factory and its fundamental differences from the legacy ETL or ELT tools like SSIS, etc. So what are the components of Azure Data Factory? So before we jump into a demo, we need to understand some of the terminology that we use in the Azure Data Factory world. Linked services. So obviously you have to link to something, a service, allow you to connect to retrieve the data set. It can be a storage account like Azure Data Lake storage or a blob storage or even a SQL server, or it can be a compute resource like Azure Databricks or any other compute resource or HD Insight, etc. And the linked services will pointing you to the specific data set that you need to work on. A data set is the actual data set that you will need to process. And activities is a set of different activities where you can do your data transformation. And pipeline is the logic grouping of different activities. And the pipeline is triggered by triggers where you can trigger the triggers to schedule your pipeline to run the activities and generate desired data set. The whole solution can be parameterized. And integration runtime, what is that? Integration runtime is, it's like a gateway. It's like a channel allow you to communicate with your data set through integration runtime. It can be self-hosted integration runtime, and it can be the cloud integration runtime. And I will talk about a little bit more later on in my slides. And we have control flow to control the pipelines. I really like this diagram because it clearly talked about the relationships between those components. So dataset represent a data items that stored in linked services. The dataset can be consumed by activity, and activity produces dataset. Pipeline is a logical grouping of activity. So this diagram is really clear, explain the relationship between linked service, dataset, activity, and pipeline. Hope you understand a little bit more about the components of Azure Data Factory now. Normally, this is a common pattern of a modern data warehouse. So the difference between a traditional business intelligence architecture and a modern data warehouse architecture is a traditional BI architecture is focusing on on-prem solution. Its capability is limited because everything is on-prem, and because of that, you wouldn't have those diversified data source extreme like IoT data, social media data, streaming data, etc. But the modern data warehouse is adding those advanced analytics layer and machine learning layer and deep machine learning layer, etc. So it can combine the structured data world like the relational data and unstructured or semi-structured data world like data from social media, IoT, line of businesses, etc. So this is a very common modern data warehouse architecture that you can see from the screen. We are not talking about all the other components today, but we are only focusing on the Azure Data Factory here. So from this architecture, you can see how the Azure Data Factory is embedded in this modern data warehouse architecture, and how it's utilized, the way it's utilized, etc. And we will talking about the key process of transforming and enriching the data set. So transforming, what are those common methods for transforming data in the multi-cloud, in the cloud world? So we have compute resources like using Databricks, and we also have SSIS packages, and we also have mapping data flow. So mapping data flow is one of the key functions within Azure Data Factory. And probably if you are from the traditional data BI world, maybe you are familiar with SSIS packages. And the new version of SSIS packages, they have the Azure model. The module in SSIS allow you to connect to an online or a cloud destination or data source, right? You can still do things that you can do the basic stuff to cloud using SSIS. But the limitation, people might ask, if I have SSIS, why should I use Azure Data Factory? So because the limitation of SSIS is it's dominantly focusing on the on-prem. So if your organization is still 80% of your data estate in on-prem, resides in on-prem, then probably SSIS is still your focus. But with the trend, every organization is moving to cloud, and also if you limited your every data estate in on-prem, you will be limited by the amount of data that you consume and the variety of data you can consume. So there's a lot of limitations. Besides that, mapping data flow is the Azure Data Factory is actually based on the Spark architecture. So if you're using mapping data flow, first of all, it's low code. It's low code, no code environment. So it has a UI, so you can do everything in a managed way in an agile prep methodology, and it's based on a Spark architecture, which automatically will spin up the performance. And the difference between the compute resources and a mapping data flow is compute resources more for data scientists, for people who have more technical skills in, for example, if they are familiar with Python, R, Scala, JSON, etc. If they are familiar with those languages, and they come from a huge data science background, by all means, computer resources might be easier for you, right? And compute resource, for example, Databricks, they provide huge flexibility. If you want to do complicated algorithms, or if you want to do customize the process, data transformation process, then you can use the compute resource. Mapping data flow is for people who don't have deep data science background. They're not too familiar with those advanced analytical languages like Python and R. They can use mapping data flow because it has huge, abundant built-in functions. It's just drag and drop. It has really beautiful UI. You can easily pick it up. So today we're not talking about computer resource or SSIS packages. We will be talking about mapping data flow. Hopefully I have time to show you an end-to-end solution in the Azure Data Factory for mapping data flow. Right. So the benefits that I pretty much mentioned on the previous slides using mapping data flow, it's basically it's a very easy tool. It enables you to build business logic instead of focusing on the coding part, right? A lot of people are not necessarily coming from a strong technical background. So instead of spending so much time to sharp your coding scripting skills, then you can spend more time on your building business logic by using this UI. And as I said, it's built on top of a Spark execution. Cool. So here, what I want to explain before I jump onto a demo is the integration runtime. As I mentioned that before, integration runtime is like a gateway that enable you to communicate, to talk to your data sources. Either it's resigned in cloud or it's resigned on premises. From the cloud part, we have a past cloud host integration runtime. It's auto-generated, so if your data source is a cloud resource, you don't really need to worry about the installing integration runtime. It's automatically installed for you. So your cloud apps or services and data can be from Amazon, AWS Cloud, Salesforce, GCP, or any other online cloud applications or services. If your data is resigned on premises applications, like your SAP, traditional SAP and Oracle or Teradata or any other applications data that's stored on-prem SQL servers, you need to install a self-hosted integration runtime. And the self-hosted integration runtime can be stored behind a firewall. And the best practice recommendation is if you store your integration runtime that close to your data sources, then you can achieve better performance. And the security part is that it only sends the outbound request. It doesn't receive any inbound request. So your on-prem data will be secure, still resigned on your premises. So so that's the integration runtime. If you have any question, okay, I saw one question, ADF, sorry. I think I used too much acronym. So ADF is Azure Data Factory. ADF, Azure Data Factory. Yeah, if you have any questions, just post on the chat and I can see and answer that whenever I see it. So before I jump into demo, is there any other questions?
Yeah, Myra, there's one other one. How can I ingest REST API JSON data received from a third party into Azure Data Lake Gen 2 or SQL Server using ADF?
Right. The question from the audience is, how can I ingest JSON data from any applications or services into Azure Data Lake Gen 2 through Azure Data Factory? So the answer is through that Azure Data Factory. Azure Data Factory has more than, I think now has more than 80 plus connections. So the good part is that no matter what your data format is, either it's JSON, Parquet, CSV, or whatever format, it can ingest as it is. And the normal pattern, if you remember the Azure the architecture, and just quickly go back to that Azure the architecture. So if your files are from unstructured data world, like JSON is a semi-structured data format, and you can use in Azure Data Factory to load your data into a data storage account, for example, a blob storage or Azure Data Lake storage. And you can use the copy activity to set the connections to your data source application systems, or either it's an on-prem, either it's an application data source system or it's a web online data sources. And then your sink, which is the destination, should be set up as blob storage or data lake. And the good thing is that Azure Data Lake can remain your raw data as it is without manipulating your data format. So the copy activity is the the part that you need to design in Azure Data Factory to enable you load your data from the source to your destination. Hope this answered your question. Before I move on, do you have any other questions? Is there any other questions from the audience? Yeah.
Yeah, the only other one at the moment is there a free version of ADF for development or tutorial purposes?
Unfortunately, the question is there any free version of ADF for tutorial purposes? So if you, unfortunately, there's no free version. For example, if you want to consume on-premises file format, then you will need to install a self-hosted integration runtime, and that costs money. The good news is that you can gain if you don't have an Azure account, you can apply for Azure credits. So you can have a trial account that will give you some credits, and you can provision an Azure Data Factory, and that will enable you will give you enough credits for your tutorial purposes. If you don't run it 24/7, it wouldn't cost too much if you just run it for a couple of hours for a tutorial, preparing for a demo, etc.
All right.
Cool.
And we've got a couple others, but I'll let you get into the demo, and then we can go through those.
Right. Yes, I'm just conscious a bit conscious of time. We have almost 20 minutes left, and we haven't gone to the list. So let me just switch my screen. So when I switch my screen, what I'm going to take you to is you can see my screen now. For people who are very new to Azure Data Factory, what you have to do is you have to go to the Azure Data Factory, you have to go to the Azure portal. So this is pretty much your homepage, and you will need to create a resource, and you just search Data Factory. And this is the process of provision a Data Factory environment. So you need to just hit create, and there's a bit of fields that you need to fill in, give a name, put in a resource group, and probably you don't need to enable Git at the moment for tutorial purposes, especially, and then you hit create. So once you create a Data Factory, what it will look like is you got this resource, and this is the page of where your Azure Data Factory is, and you need to click this author and monitoring button, and it will take you to the Azure Data Factory environment. So it has its own UI where you can start doing your development. So on this page, this is the home page where you can see we have a lot of tutorials, a lot of videos where you can learn a lot about Azure Data Factory if you are new to Azure Data Factory, right? So there's a lot of good information, and it's easy enough for you to get started if you are very new to Azure Data Factory. And here, what I want to say is there are a lot of great quick starts that you can click any of these, and you can just they will provide a templates behind the scenes. So let's just get into the author panel, where you can see there's a pencil panel. So this is basically the development environment for Azure for the Azure Data Factory, and you can see pipelines, data sets, data flows, and the concepts that and the triggers, etc., connections that I explained in the previous slides for components. So pipelines that you can see that I have a mapping data flow. Let me just quickly click a new pipeline. And so this is, I just create a new pipeline. It's nothing. So this part is the canvas where you can like if you are familiar with SSIS, you know it's a canvas where you can drag and drop a lot of things. So in the middle, you can see the activities where you can do your data transformation by drag and drop different movements. For example, if I want to copy data, to answer the question that someone asked before, how can I load JSON data format data source into a data lake storage, for example? So you can just click this copy data activity, and once you have dragged it over there, and at the bottom is the configuration section where you need to set up all the configurations. Source is obviously the source data that you need to connect to, and sink is destination. I don't know why it's called sink, but it's basically the destination where you want to put your data to, where you want to move your data to. In that scenario, you need to move into a blob storage or Azure Data Lake Gen 2. And here it's very simple. You can do a little bit of mapping, you can do a little bit of manipulation, or you can just load as it is. So once you set up this, sorry, before you set up a sink and a source, so you need to set up your linked services. So for example, your JSON format data is from an on-premises data source. So what you need to do is go to the connections. As I mentioned that before, we have linked services. So this is the place where enable you to connect to your data sources, right? If your data is from integration, is from on-prem, then you need to install a self-hosted integration runtime. So here you can see that we have an auto-resolve integration runtime. So this is the cloud version. So this is the PaaS cloud host integration runtime, and it is automatically installed for you. So you don't need to worry about anything. But if you do have an on-prem data source, then you will need to install different self-hosted, for example, here. And you can see here there's the Azure SSIS. So another integration runtime. So there are three types. One is the cloud-hosted integration runtime, which is automatically installed for you. And there's self-hosted integration runtime where enable you to connect to your on-prem data. And there's Azure SSIS integration runtime. So what this does is if you have a lot of SSIS packages, you can lift and shift your existing SSIS packages to be executed in Azure Cloud. So you will need to install a SSIS integration runtime enabled to run the SSIS packages. Cool. So we don't have enough time to go through each of the types of integration runtime and click through how to set it up. It's very easy. If you search integration runtime installation, and you'll find a lot of tutorials, and it's very easy to set it up. You can just follow through and do your demo. So we're gonna skip that from here. So once you set up your linked services, and you just need to set up your data set. So data set, it's like the specific table. It's like the specific files that you need to work on, right? It's the desired data set that you work on directly, that you need to transform or manipulate or move or etc. So after having the linked services set up, you click new data set. And from here, you can see that we have a lot of connections, right? You can get data from AWS, you can get data from GCP, you can get data from Dynamics, you can get data from any other format, as you can tell, right? So once you connect to that data sources and you define the data format, and you can just set up the data set. So here I have a CSV file that I already loaded. Yeah, two of them are CSV files. So once you got the data set, it's now what we need to work on is to, for example, I need to move my CSV file from one location to another location. So here I quickly show you what I do is, because I set up my data source. So I'm just picking up the, for example, this file. So I set up the source and I can preview my data set. So this is what it looks like. And I'm gonna sync the data set into another place, for example, this location. And now it's set up. And what you need to do is you need to publish. So as I said that you connect, remember the data factory process? You collect your data sources and you transform and then you enrich your data set and then you publish. So publish is allowing you to save all those code and publish it into the service, into the cloud service. Now it's telling me publishing complete. So the next step is I can trigger it. I can trigger now, or I can trigger it based on the event or based on the sliding window, fumbling window. So I can do a lot of things to make sure how, based on how I want to schedule it. So I'm trigger it now. And the last process is to monitor. So we come to the monitor panel, and you can see that the pipeline that I just built, it's running successfully. And you can see how it's run. And you can go to the monitoring panel, and you can see that how the data is transformed. This is just a very simple demo, right, for copying activity. So what I want to introduce you to another two concepts is data mapping and the data wrangling. Data mapping that I talked about a little bit before, basically it's a transformation tool that we have within Azure Data Factory, where you can do a lot of, so for example, let me just drag this here. So if you don't have a data flow, you can create a new data flow. So this is a mapping data flow. You can choose. Traditionally, what you have to do is you have to probably do a lot of data manipulation, data transformation in at different places. And especially if you have hybrid environment, it is really hard for you to do this transformation because you have to using different tools. For example, you're using SSIS to do the on-prem part, and maybe using Warescape to do the maybe data masking or data sanitizing, or do a lot of different things. And you are using so many different ELT, ETL tools to do for different purposes. But for data mapping in Azure Data Factory, you can do pretty much everything here at one place in a managed way, right? In one environment. So it's very easy. Without going through from scratch, let me just show you an existing pipeline that I've already built. So a lot of common scenarios about using mapping data flow, for example, is you using slowly changing dimension, right? You do a lot of CTC, and you want to deduplicate your data. So those are very common scenarios where we need to using mapping data flow. So in this case, I'll show you the deduplicate your data set. I've already built all of this. I can't show you how I built it because it's quite a complicated process. But basically, for example, if I just stop here, and you can see I click this plus button, we can do a lot of things for example, you can merge, join multiple inputs and outputs. You can do your schema modification. You can pivot, aggregate, select, derive the columns, flatten your data set, and you can do role modification. You can sort your role, you can order your roles, you can filter your roles, etc. So there's a lot of things you can do with the data mapping. Basically, whatever you want to do, it will enable you to do it here. So this data mapping is basically just to duplicate the source data that I have and generating no duplicate data set and a duplicate data set. So the destination here I have is I generate the two files that one is putting in the duplicate folder and one is putting in the no duplicate folder. So that's basically what I do. And I ran it last night. The first time failed, but the second time it succeed. So you can see the process as I showed you before. And if it's failed, you can debugging it, and it give you the error message, and you can find what's actually wrong. So it's quite easy. And for development, we also have the debugging mode. You can see data flow debug. So you can actually debug at each of the steps to see what actually went wrong. So you don't need to run the whole process, but you can focus on one particular step. Another concept that I want to talk about, conscious of time, is the wrangling data flow. So what's the difference? Before I jump over there, like what I mentioned before here is when I drag this data flow activity, if I create a new, probably you can see before you see mapping data flow and you can see wrangling data flow. So the wrangling data flow is currently in public preview. So if you got in there here, you can still play around. It's not general available yet, but it's in public preview. So it's pretty much there. So the difference between the wrangling data flow and the mapping data flow is wrangling data flow is more focusing on one particular data set. And if you are familiar with Power BI, it's pretty much the similar experience of your Power Query using M language. And if you are familiar with Excel, then this is also a familiar experience for you as well. So let me show you what it looks like. I've already built a wrangling data flow here. Basically, this is it's a taxi data that I got from open source. I think this is not working. So you can see this is this is the interface, right? This is really pretty much like the Power Query that you see from Power BI. There are a little bit of limitations in terms of what it can do comparing to Power BI, because Power BI is more in the market for a lot longer than this wrangling data flow in ADF. But it will be as powerful as Power BI in no time. So what you can do here is you can remove add columns, you can merge columns, you can remove null or duplicate rows, you can change data types. You can do so many things here just to make sure to wrangle the data set. It's basically it's working on one data set. It's not multiple data set. Obviously, you can also work for multiple data set to merge and join different data set, but basically it's focusing on wrangling the data, right? So if your data is at terabytes, let me just exit this and go back to the data set. Oh wait, yeah. Let me just see. What I'm trying to show you is if you are, sorry, I'm jumping through. Yeah, so if you are not familiar with any scripting, and this is a perfect code-free environment, so you don't need to write any Python or JSON code to manipulate data. But if you also, from a technical background, you also want to deal with the scripting, this is the M language. You can also do a lot of manipulation just by scripting here. So you can satisfy to all sorts of level, either it's technical or non-technical. Cool. So let me just jump out. I want to find out a place where I can do. Where is it? What I'm trying to show you was if your data is at terabytes or petabyte scale, you can just change the compute type as well by specifying the size of the core. So the Azure Data Factory will automatically spin up the compute resource for you, and you will have the best performance. I couldn't find the configuration, but it's fine. I'm sure it's somewhere. Not the data sets. It's supposed to be here, or maybe I was using a different version. So the data set that I will connecting to is a CSV file that I put in Azure Data Lake. And if my data is actually terabytes or petabyte scale, there is a compute setting. I think it's supposed to be here, but I didn't see it. Maybe I'm using not the preview version. But anyway, so what I'm trying to say is Azure Data Factory enables you to deal with a large-scale data set, so you don't need to worry about performance. Right. I think basically I've walked through some of the key things what I talked about in the Azure in the slides, and this is basically the environment where you can do your development, and you can monitoring, and you can debugging as well. There are a lot of things I didn't cover, right? It's a lot. I don't want to overwhelm you. For example, what are those ARM templates, right? What are those trigger types, and what are all the other activities? And so there are so many things I didn't cover, folks, because we don't really have time. And this presentation definitely is just on the level 100 and 200. So if you want to find out more about Azure Data Factory, you're more than welcome to do a lot of studying yourself, because there's a lot of tutorials online. And you also, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. And let me just switch back to my slides. I have my, hope you can still see my screen. This is what we talked about here today.
Yep, we can see it. We can see it.
Yeah, so here's my contact. You can add me on LinkedIn, and if you have any questions, you can ask me. And also, we have maybe 1 or 2 minutes left. I'm not sure whether we still have time to answer any questions.
Yeah, we're pretty close to the end here. And so what I'm just going to recommend is folks, because there are a number of folks that do have questions that are outstanding, and reach out to Myra out on LinkedIn. That's actually how I tracked her down after she did a SQL Saturday presentation for presenting here today. So I can guarantee you that it works. So with this, I think I'm going to close things down, Myra. And thank you for presenting today. This has been extremely helpful.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining me.
Yes, and thank you everyone for attending, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.
Yep. It's 7 a.m. in New Zealand.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we're at 2 p.m. So I'll enjoy my afternoon. You enjoy your morning.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Thank you. And
bye.
goodbye.